my introduction, I'll keep it short. I'm Stefan. I'm an Atlassian consultant. I've been using eazyBI for, let's say, 8 years or so. It's a steep learning curve. The last few years I've been mastering it, I wouldn't say, but it's a tool that I often use. Most customers, I use eazyBI, introduce eazyBI. And there's some things that I learned, and I'd like to share those. So this talk will be about control reporting. The concept of control reporting, I want to explain what is it, and I want to give some examples using real-life use cases. A friend asked me, but aren't all reports about control? And so the short answer, I think, would be yes, they are about control. But I want to differentiate between different types of reports to clarify what I mean. So I categorize reports in 3 types for convenience sake. You have reports that tell the company where are we now. You have reports that tell the company where are we heading, are we on target, and what is to be expected for the future. There's a third group, I would say, I call that control reporting, where you focus on something else. You focus on the integrity of the data, meaning is the data complete? Or are there perhaps any duplicates? Are there exceptions to the rule? And are there outliers? These types of reports serve a particular purpose, and I think this is the general theme that I want to bring across. I want to also challenge you to think about what this purpose might be. This contains some of a hint to the answer. I want to take this quote a step further. I think that besides trusting in data, we should also think about how can we trust our data. So, when we have a report, how can we have trust in what we see is actually correct? These are the usage statistics from the 3 use cases that I will present. 1, 2, 3 lists of reports that are used by these customers. And I circled the control reports. It's in Dutch, mostly so, but it says control reports. And you will see that these reports are very often opened or executed. You will also note that they're not on top of the list, which is a good thing. This is the picture you want to see. The actual reports customers are interested in are on the top. And the role of these control reports, for me, are to push up the trust in the actual reports that they're interested in. So this is, for me, I like to see this. The 3 use cases that I will present will focus on, each one will focus on a different type of control report. And each one will show a different technique used to get through such a control report. And all 3 have one thing in common. It's all about time registration. Registration of hours or time spent, if you say it in Jira language. First use case. The first use case will handle the allocation of hours to a particular budget. And the technique I use, I call it non-checks. You can also just simply call it empty checks. This particular customer is interested in which hours belong to which budget. This is a summary report where these budgets are categorized as capital expenditures or operational expenditures. So the customer wants to see this because they see, yes, we're spending 60% of budget on our capital expenditures, and it returns off investment. So this is what they want to see. But in reality, it looks more like this. there's a big red chunk missing. And it's easy to leave that out. But me, I'm actually mostly interested in the red part. Underneath the report, there's a whole bunch of data that's aggregated before it is categorized as the operational or capital expenditures. So I opened this long list of the underlying data. In this case, that is a custom field. The custom field name in this case is IT number. But I've seen a lot of customers that use some kind of custom field to label a certain JIRA issue so that they know to what budget the time spent on that issue belongs to. Very common use case, I think. I'm interested in the none part. None just means empty, but if it's a string field, then you'll end up with a value called none. You can simply select the none member from the custom field dimension in your report. So far, pretty easy. And there you already zoom in on the particular issues that don't have a value. Now, this is already very useful, because the end user can just click on it, click on the number, zoom in on the issues, and you know exactly where the data is missing. Go to JIRA, correct it. I'm going to take it a step further, because we can do other things. So when we know which issues do not have a value, we can also do the opposite and say, give me everything that does have a value. And once we have those two things, we can create our first report. Here we see an overview over time. The reason I was asked to present this overview over time was because this particular customer told me that the previous report, this one, is not actually useful. So I asked, why not? Well, when we went into these JIRA issues, I saw that they actually do have a code to allocate the budget to. But IT number is empty. Oh yes, I forgot to mention, there's another field. So that other field was called a sub-project, and it was the field that was used as a legacy field before. So somewhere you can see clearly, somewhere around November, it significantly dropped in empty values. So basically it means that from November they formalized the change from the sub-project field to the IT number field. So we do the same thing for the sub-project field and see what that brings us. I turned the colors around, but it's the same report. And you can see that in blue you see that sub-project was used before, then in November it significantly dropped. But there's overlap. So I figured, okay, let's make it easier for this particular customer to know exactly which issues they want to find. And I combined the two fields, IT number and SAP, and I just pretend it's one field. You will also notice this is not MDX, this is JavaScript, because I attempt to do this as a calculated JavaScript custom field during the import for performance purposes and just to reduce complexity in the report. Plus, I can use the exact same MDX, just change the field name and get a new report that shows all the empty values where both IT number and SAP project are empty. Now a customer just clicks on the red bar where there's numbers and knows the actual issues that cannot be allocated to a budget. And we go back to our first report that management wanted, and we just include. Now, that is actually still empty. We get the same results. But what is the difference between this report and the first report? I can feel it. I hope you can also feel the difference. The customer learned a couple of things during this process. They learned that there were a bunch of issues that were not allocated acceptable to a budget because it was used by external partners who didn't get the memo that they should use the field. There were some projects that were already closed that when they still used the old field, they did have a number for it, but when they generated the new field, they didn't have a number for it, and a bunch of organizational stuff. Use case number 2, where I zoom in on the exceptions in data. Here it's about the registration of hours in general, more of control of employees, whether they log their time correctly. And in this example, I will use tuples as a technique. This was the remark that I got, the assignment that I got. People should not book their any more time on tickets, or let's say projects, that were already considered to be closed. So in Jira language, you could read issues that are already closed. Recognizable request, I get it often, something like this. So you might ask, okay, you, especially as a Jira consultant, why not make sure that people cannot book time in Jira on issues that are closed? Well, reality sinks in again. These are, don't bother reading it, I will tell you. It's about 51 different statuses. And if you read through them, you will know there's no closed. So we do have 31 occurrences of done, which are team-managed projects. So besides that, we have deployed, implemented, done RTP, geschlossen, cancelled, and cancelled misspelled. eazyBI to the rescue. All these statuses have one thing in common. They're the end status of a workflow. And there's a very, very easy way to quickly get to the data you actually want. We use the transition status category done. And you can actually define it as such. This, what you're looking at, is a very simple formula, and this is what I call a tuple. It's where two different dimensions meet. And it's a way to quickly slice through your data, through your data set, and work from there with exactly the data that's relevant for you. And it didn't need much more than this, actually, to get at least some overview of hey, how often are people logging on Jira issues that are already closed. So this is in a selected time period in February 2024. And this shows a list of Jira issues that were already in a status category closed when the time was booked in February. And I included the day it was resolved to see the oldest and the biggest differences. I took it one step further. I add a new column where I just give some interpretation to what we actually see in the human language. Simple added column. This really makes it easier for the report user to understand what they're looking at instantly. And you can nicely color it to make it stand out. Client was pretty happy, easily seeing this overview. And the client also didn't have the demand anymore to actually implement something in Jira to prevent logging time on hours closed. So, thank God. As a final use case, I'll handle deviations. This is about time registration, but in particular, it's about registration of leave. This is a very complex use case because it imports data from different data sources. It's not just Jira. It uses Jira assets. It uses our legacy system. and some external data sources for contract hours. And we combine everything for now for this purpose. Take the data that we have as granted. And for this example, we use averages and standard deviation to find outliers in the data set. This is the report that is created for the end user, where the end user can quickly see, the employee, can see how many leave they have for a year, how much of it they have already spent, how much they still have planned, and how much they have remaining. Then we have an HR manager who wants to check whether this process is going well. Imagine 100 employees, and 100 employees, each of them have different agreements about the total leave balance. Some might work more hours, so they have more leave balance. Some already went on holiday in January, and others saved that time for later in the year. Some people are very meticulous in planning ahead. Some people just, oh yeah, I went on a holiday last week. So it's very difficult for an HR manager to just at a glance from the data see how it's going. Basically, your data set doesn't fit a certain specific threshold that it can meet. So you have to think about how to find the exceptions within these exceptions. There's an example of what you could imagine the HR manager looking at. He could probably get the information he wants from this, but it's a challenge, let's say, and you will get a little bit chased off. So we introduce averages and standard deviation to simply find the outliers in the data set. And we use that in an additional column like we did earlier, where we just put human language as context in a new column, which results in something that immediately tells the HR manager what is going on. So we did it here for the leave balance, and we just simply show it's positive or negatively different from the baseline. What I find really useful about this report is that it just moves through time. So it will work at any moment during the year, because the averages will change and the standard deviation will change. So the report is moving along with it. Now you can imagine there's other things you can put in the last column. You can explain some people have a high leave balance left over from the year before. I didn't bother to do that here, but in a different report I did. And the HR manager doesn't have just this report. Right? For them, I created a reporting dashboard, a combination of different types of reports that are built up the same way. And you can just at a glance go here, see what are the action points. In this case, mostly the HR manager himself who neglected to put in a new leave balance for the current year, or neglected to put in contract hours for new employees. Yeah, this particular HR manager was a challenge to get him to use the reports. So just to summarize, I went through 3 use cases. The first showed an example of checking which data was missing. The other used tuples to find exceptions. And in the third use case, we used averages and standard deviation to find outliers. You'll notice that for each of these reports, some might use some MDX, but conceptually, they're very easy to understand. And I really tend to focus more and more, as I get more into report building, on bringing context to the report. And even just very simple things as showing showing that something is a positive result or a negative result, or positive deviation, negative deviation. It helps even to state those obvious things. It really does help, because the report user might get just overwhelmed seeing only numbers. And colors really help. I want to conclude with what I learned from all of this. I think it's a given that reality often is pretty messy. I think control is an illusion in itself. We can, however, try to achieve some kind of a feeling of control. We can do this by zooming in on the mess and explain it. At least that gives some peace of mind. And control reporting can help do that. And I hope the last sentence makes sense to you, as this is what the underlying theme for me would be. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Stefan. Do we have any questions though, Stefan?
Thanks for these good use cases. So I was wondering, as a eazyBI, so we are pulling this historical data from Jira, and if you find that there were historical mistakes, then it's quite hard to fix them historically in Jira, for example. So how do you address then if you find out that there were some historical errors, invalid historical statuses or other custom fields, but then you can fix them just now? So how do you fix these errors? Or then you write these calculations that previously it was so, and then ignore it, and then use it the current one. So any use cases how to fix historical errors in Jira?
If you have a concrete example, I have one concrete example in mind, and I haven't been able to fix that. I think what I'm thinking of is when you import cycle times of different statuses, where even if a workflow changed completely during the years, and oftentimes it changed multiple times, all of these transition statuses would still be in the history of the issue. That can be so messy that I haven't been able to fix that yet. And so keep you posted.
So, if no more questions, then thanks for your presentation.